Aziz has always loved Iraq. He was proud of his country's rich history that began more than 5,000 years ago in an area known as Mesopotamia. The great civilizations that had once settled in this region, including the Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, and Ottomans, left Iraq with a rich and varied culture. Aziz was familiar with many of Iraq's great poets and painters, and imagined himself becoming a famous Iraqi artist someday. Aziz fondly remembers going to school and spending time with his family as a little boy in Baghdad. Even with the ongoing sectarian struggle between the Sunnis, Shiites, and Kurds, everything seemed fine to Aziz, at least until March 2003 when the U.S. military invaded the country. At night, bombings violently shook his house and the explosions lit up the sky. After 2003, the sectarian violence got worse. The Shiite majority began to take control from the Sunni minority, and Sunni terrorist groups, such as Al-Qaeda, influenced the country. Aziz and his family lost contact with departing friends and family members, many of whom were middle-class professionals, doctors, engineers, lawyers, and academics. Aziz's own family made the decision to flee Iraq following the 2006 bombing of the Al-Askari Mosque, one of the holiest Shia Islam shrines in the world. The bombing was linked to Al-Qaeda and unleashed a surge of retaliatory violence between the Sunnis and Shiites that left many innocent Iraqis dead. With their lives endangered, Aziz and his family joined the hundreds of thousands of Iraqis fleeing their homeland due to sectarian and ethnic violence. Aziz's family now found themselves as refugees looking to find protection outside of their homeland. The 1951 Refugee Convention is a key international legal document that defines who is a refugee. It outlines the rights of refugees and the legal obligations of states to protect them. The UN's 1951 Refugee Convention defines a refugee as someone who has been forced to flee his or her country because of persecution, war, or violence. A refugee has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. The majority of Iraqis displaced by the Iraqi war migrated to neighboring Syria and Jordan. Other Iraqi refugees have sought refuge in Lebanon, Egypt, and Iran. Jordan is a nation of refugees. The country provides asylum to almost 650,000 refugees. Refugees constitute about 1/10 of the total population of Jordan. Homelands of most recent refugee arrivals are from Iraq and Syria. Aziz's family decided to move to Jordan, where they had relatives. Aziz's father had spent some time in Jordan's capital city of Amman doing business. He thought he would be able to find work there. Iraqi refugees in Jordan are dispersed among Jordanian urban population. They are not granted automatic refugee status. They have restrictive asylum space. Most had temporary residence permits. In 2008, Jordan required visa requirements for Iraqis. Iraqis can't access aid, as in provisions, healthcare, and education. When they arrived at the Jordanian border, Aziz's family received temporary residence permits, which meant they could legally stay in Jordan for a limited amount of time. Life in Amman was not easy. Aziz's family faced a number of restrictions in Jordan. His parents were not allowed to work, and the family did not have access to public services like healthcare. Aziz and his siblings could not even go to school. Luckily, Iraqi neighbors were former teachers and held classes in their apartment. His mom found work as a private cleaner, but his father could only find odd jobs. The family often thought that life in a refugee camp might be easier. They wouldn't need to worry about being deported illegally. In a camp, they could receive aid, including food, health care, and schooling. Aziz's family would not have to deal with angry neighbors yelling at them, telling them they were taking over their neighborhood. The weeks in Jordan turned into months, and the months into years. 3 years after arriving, life had become even more precarious. In 2009, the family examined their options. The UN Refugee Agency works in over 125 countries, helping some 33.9 million people. The UN High Commissioner of Refugees, also known as the UN Refugee Agency, aims to help refugees normalize their life. The agency and its partner organizations have identified 3 paths to safety and normalcy: voluntary repatriation, local integration in the host country, and resettlement in a third country. Returning to Iraq was Aziz's first choice. Voluntary repatriation to the country of origin is also the UN Refugee Agency's most preferred option. However, in 2008, after they heard about their former neighbor being shot and killed in Baghdad, the family recognized that Iraq was still too dangerous to return to. The UNHCR submits the files of only 1% of refugees for resettlement. Few countries take part in UNHCR resettlement program. The U.S. is the world's largest resettlement country. As a resettlement country, the U.S. provides Iraqi refugees with the rights to employment, public education, health care, and pathways to naturalized citizenship. Aziz's family felt that their only viable option was to turn to UNHCR to be resettled. Thankfully, U.S. doors were open to Iraqi refugees at the time. Aziz was excited to come to the United States, and especially pleased to be placed in the greater Seattle area in Washington state, where he already had 2 cousins. He was also nervous about arriving in a country that had a completely different language and culture from his own. When he first arrived, he had a few challenges adjusting to his new life. Aziz found it hard to talk with other students, and beside the language divide, most of the other students couldn't identify with his experiences. Also, Islamic culture was portrayed negatively in America. Aziz felt alienated from his peers. Iraq has a proud history, and Aziz more than ever was proud to be an Iraqi. He wanted his new neighbors in the U.S. to better understand his country's history and people. Aziz promised himself that he would continue to work hard and get a good education. He looked forward to the day when he could go back to Iraq to visit his relatives and help rebuild his country.